Bonito sitio, ¿verdad? Este es solo uno de los miles de rincones increíbles que tenemos en este país y que cobran vida gracias al turismo. Ese turismo que nos ha llevado tan lejos, siempre hacia adelante. Pero, ¿y si hubiera una forma de hacerlo aún mejor? De que nos vean mejor. ¿Y si lo llevamos entre todos aún un poco más lejos? Hacia ese turismo que todos queremos.
Comenzamos con el primer panel, Out of the Box, Nuevas Realidades Turísticas Globales. Invitamos a subir al escenario a Luis Araujo, former President of Tourism Portugal, Gabriele Burgio, President of Alpitur Italia, Steve Happy, Chief Executive Officer of Jet2 Holidays, Christine Maguire, Global Vice President of TripAdvisor, Miguel Sanz, President European Travel Commission y Director General de Tour España. Modera este encuentro José Luis Zoreda, Vicepresidente de Exceltur.
Well, good morning, everybody. As you know, this panel will be taking place in English. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's really a pleasure, and I hope all the audience valorates the fact of having with us today the leaders of the two main buyers of Spain, of two critical and most important countries, the UK, Steve Hippie, Gabriele Burgio, the chairman of Alpitur, the fourth most important market for Spain. I would continue with Christine Maguire. She heads and is the global vice president of TripAdvisor. I don't have to explain you what TripAdvisor means, the biggest social network and travel prescriptor of travel around the world. I'm also very pleased to have here today someone we have been following very attentively in Exceltur in his past responsibilities as head of tourism of Portugal, our very beloved neighbor, which has proved highly innovative tourism policies in the past years that we would have liked to have been implemented in Spain for a while. We always look forward to the north, but tourism looking, we should be starting looking a little bit to the west, if not to the south. And definitely Luis has been responsible of those policies. And last but not least, even though today he is as President of the European Travel Commission, is notwithstanding that, he is the CEO of Tour España, a tourism board group. He's also someone which is giving up a new speed to Tour España, and we definitely are very happy with that. The main issues to be discussing today, as you know, is we have been not only in Spain, but basically, as I heard from Gabriele and other players in Europe, had a very successful closing of 2023, and very good prospects for 2024. But having said that, and even though in Spain, as Gabriel Escarrer just pointed out, tourism has represented only a 70% of the Spanish economy growth in last year, we've been questioning, and we are being questioned every day in various parts of the country by local societies, finding that tourism is not providing them with all what they expected from tourism. The reason here is you have a great experience and great opportunities to find out what is happening in various parts of the world. I would like to start with you, Christine, as a major influencer of tourism around the world. How do you view this fact of over-tourism, which is not only a Spanish issue, it happens in some other successful destinations around the world, and how do you advise your clients, if you want to call it like that, on these issues, and what are your views on how we should proceed with this phenomenon that may be growing, and definitely if it grows, Spain will be subject to this growth.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. TripAdvisor as a...
No, it doesn't work. Do we have a microphone? No?
Do you have these?
Hello?
Can you try again?
I think it works.
Better?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So first and foremost, we're obviously a travel platform, but we're also a media platform. And we take the responsibility very seriously of curating the wealth of first-party data that we have on search preferences and things people are doing with the community that we have. And what we found over the last few years, especially through the pandemic, is people are really looking for hidden gems. And it's on us to make sure that we're curating up and personalizing those hidden gems that people don't know about, but they're very similar to other destinations or other experiences or things to do that you or people like you would really like to do. So that's step one, is really how do we take the content, the community, and our first-party data to make sure that we're surfacing those great things and places to go that you wouldn't otherwise know about. And then the second is we look at ourselves as a travel planner with you through the entire journey, from inspiration and discovery right through to in destination and back again. So, you know, it's as important to us as, you know, helping inform you on what to pack as how to travel and how to act when you're in destination. And our great destination partners are really helpful in giving us that information to make sure that we serve that up to our community, our travelers, pre-trip, and then also when they're in destination and on trip. So for us, it's really about making sure that we're curating and personalizing the content and making sure our community can find that content.
Thanks, and thanks for being short. Steve, let me go into you now. Your main business, if I have to define it, is moving as much people as possible to various destinations around the world. How do you view this phenomena of raising criticism in some destinations in relation to over-tourism, massification, whatever you will call it?
Well, first of all, I'm not an apologist for working in the tourism industry. I think as a CEO of an airline, I'm expected to wear a hair shirt and perpetually apologise for doing so, which I don't, because tourism is very much a force for good and has been for a long time. It brings, you know, huge economic benefits to destinations. I think there is a real need to understand the needs of the populations that we take people to. Tourism's been around for years, and this should have happened for years, and it hasn't. Governments, individuals have grown fat from the proceeds of tourism, and none has been reinvested into local communities. I agree, it should be now. If you look at the models of some other countries, they're investing in road infrastructure, rail, reservoirs, water management systems, and have been for several years. And this should be happening in the destinations that we go to. In terms of our sustainability objectives, we have a policy that we've had in place for several years now, probably the strongest of any company in the UK and one of the strongest in Europe. We offset every gram of carbon dioxide we emit. We invest in projects throughout Europe to improve infrastructure. So the proceeds of some of our tourists goes back into the communities that we send people to in an indirect way. I agree 100% with what Gabrielle said, that we need a joint approach to understand the needs of the communities and to try and help them you know, live better lives. I think one of the issues, which I will mention at some stage, maybe several times today, is Airbnb. I've been talking about this for years and years and years with all areas of the Spanish government, regional governments, local governments, national governments. Nothing's been done. And you go to somewhere like Ibiza, no doctors, no dentists, because people can't afford to live there. Sort Airbnb out. That will be a huge help to the local communities. Make housing more affordable for the people that live there. It's not been done.
Well, you raised an issue which will come later on, which is the problem of housing, short-term rentals, and how that is affecting some local communities. But I would like to go now to our second biggest buyer of tourism in Spain, Gabriele. What is your view from Italy of this phenomenon that is also affecting some of your, in particular case, more cultural cities like the Florences, the Venices? What is the views and what are the views of the government and the private sector in respect to that increase that will continue to go of tourism in major Italian destinations?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I think the question is that there is what Gabriel was referring to, there is a total lack from private to public, first point. Second point, in Italy we do not have big companies, so the government does not have a counterpart to talk to because the enterprise structure of Italy are all very small and family-owned companies, and they are not really organized in associations so strong to be dialoguing with the government. So that is a point, lack of planning. The second is an explosion of the demand, which has taken everybody by surprise, especially in the old towns, like you mentioned before, but apart from Venice and Rome and Florence, that are a case that you could be studied by universities because the change of the offer, like the hospitality offer, is a scandal, in my opinion. The freedom of all these, let's call Airbnb solutions, it's not acceptable. But also minor towns like Taormina, like Siena. So we really do not know what to do, especially because we can separate two types of tourists. The ones that go and stay Airbnbs or hotel for 2-3 days, okay, but then we have a massive presence of people that go to visit these towns for 1 day. So, for example, in Venice, you have this boat unloading thousands of people. You have the cruise lines that are really an incredible factor because also traffic-wise, you know, Venice, the size of there are no roads, so the size of the structure is what it is. So I see that this is a big problem. How we should be answering this, and probably everybody should answer it, is to create alternative solutions. Promote smaller towns, try to spread this tourism to other destinations, and hoping that people that have been once to Venice or to Florence, next time they go to some other places. But this is a long-term planning, and we need to invest in it.
But do you collaborate, the private sector, with the, because I mean, you say that in Italy you don't have big companies. I mean, Exceltur is a giant.
Yeah, we are.
Do you have a good relation with the government? Do they consult you?
Because I'm Italian politicians in the. No, I think it's difficult because we have been changing the responsible of the tourism very often, and every government has presented the new one. And second, the Italian Constitution delegates the responsibility of managing tourism to the regions. So even if you have a national minister of tourism, his power is very limited. At this point, her power is very limited.
Luis, in Portugal, you don't have a decentralized management of tourism. Tell us a little bit of the secrets and the problems you faced with if over-tourism is a problem in Portugal, and how do you view these circumstances from your point of view?
Well, we used to have a much more decentralized. We used to have 24 or 25 different regions in Portugal. The governance now, we have a public organization, depending on the Minister of Economy, that takes care of everything from A to Z. So it does from product development to promotion, training, investment, everything is based on that entity. And then we have 7 regions that help, or with which we coordinate in order to promote and develop the country. It's a good example. It has room for improvement, but I think it's a wonderful example. And Gabriel, you spoke about the new plans for the new governance in Spain. I think it's a wonderful example to look at in terms of developing a tourism destination. This said, and I would like to start with this, I don't apologize myself like Steve for working in tourism, and I've worked 20 years in the private and 10 in the public, so I've been both sides. But the fact is that we are victims and villains of our own success. And if we don't accept this, and if we don't take compromise, and I think it's a wonderful motto, purpose and compromise, if we don't accept this, we will never overcome the challenges that we have, including over-tourism, or the perception of over-tourism, or the perception of the lack of housing, or the perception, and I talk about the perception because sometimes decisions are taken not based on data or real facts, but based on perception and social media. And that is happening everywhere in the world. It's not just Portugal. It's happening everywhere in the world. But there is a funny fact, which is compromise hurts. And most of us have to accept that sky is not the limit. And sometimes we have to think more of the goodwill plan and not as much on the business plan. So I would say it's a problem in Portugal, it's a problem everywhere because of this, because there is a lack of commitment, especially between both parties.
Thanks a lot, Luis. Last but not least, Miguel. I know that you're working hard in Tour España on creating new indicators for measuring and showing off, not if we have bitten with 84 million, but if we have been able to beat social satisfaction, resident satisfaction, in other words, another metrics to measure how to grow in a more sustainable manner. Can you give us a little bit some indications, and why did you arrive to find that that should be a priority for the Spanish government?
Well, I think, first of all, let me give as President of the European Travel Commission perspective on his work. Yes. On over-tourism is a problem on certain destinations. 2023 has been a great year, but in most of Europe, it hasn't been yet a year of total recovery. Only 1 in 3 countries in Europe have recovered to 2019 numbers. Over-tourism is something, as Luis was saying, is something that happened because of our own success, and not controlling our own success. And I think one of the reasons for that is not having the right indicators, as you were saying. Over and over, we see in Spain that success in tourism is measured in terms of the number of visitors that come to Spain. And that has been, for long, not the most accurate indicator for success. That has been an indicator of how many people has been here. But as I said when I was responsible for the city of Madrid, I don't bring people to walk around the Retiro Park. I bring people to have dinner at restaurants, to spend nights at hotels, and to buy things at the stores and shops. And when we count tourists, what does it mean for the economy of the country, the employment of the country, and the well-being of the citizens of the country? And one of the, I think, biggest steps that we have to do is, and we will have achieved that, is when next Fitur we won't see Spain has a new record in the number of visitors, but Spain has a new record in the number of jobs or the number of whatever that is really meaningful to the well-being of the people of this country. And for that, we are developing at European level, at WTO level, and at Spanish level, different indicators. For example, for the first time, we are doing this year in Tour España a survey, a national survey, of the perception of tourism by Spanish residents. What is the perception? How tourism impacts their livelihoods? And how do they think tourism impacts the livelihoods of their community? And this is going to give us a clear data of what is the opinion of the Spanish residents, of the Spanish people towards tourism, not only in these hotspots that suffer over tourism, but across the country. Because I will bet that the results will be that people in most parts of Spain want, that is not me.
It's over tourism.
I promise. Someone's sabotaging me. I'm sure that most people will. I'm sure that the answer will be that most people are in favor of tourism in their communities, are in favor of the developing of the tourism industry, and they want politicians and the public company to commit to one thing, is that tourism contributes to their well-being. And that's what tourism has done over the last 50 years in Spain. And that is what maybe we have to focus again, not in the number of visitors, but in the numbers that reflect the well-being of the Spanish citizens.
Thank you. Christine, when you have to advise your followers in TripAdvisor countries to travel, do you consider sustainability and to respect local values an issue to advise your customers?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of the destinations, obviously, and it's absolutely a big area of how we sort of think about information and guidance to our users in our community. You know, I look at so many examples across our reviews and our forums and things that get circulated post big events like 9/11, where local restaurants that people loved were shut down. And not until then did they really realize the impact of tourism to keep those restaurants thriving, and it was too little too late, right? So it's really, you know, connecting the dots with what the tourism and travelers do with the local communities to make sure that they understand, you know, the balance that's needed to keep the economy thriving. I mean, I travel a lot, I come to Europe a lot, and I will say things like, you know, walking into the hotel room and the lights coming on and turning off, the, you know, glass bottles, the towels and those being reused are just things I take for granted now, and I do think consistency sort of wins the race. We look at TripAdvisor on what people are saying and what they're doing, and sometimes those things don't always match, right? But those kind of practices, if consistently applied across the globe, are actually good for the bottom line, and they're good for the sustainable tourism industry. So I think there's a lot of things that platforms like TripAdvisor can do to make sure that the business practices and the destination policies and things that you should do in destination are really surfaced for users, even if it doesn't mean a premium on their trip.
Steve, I agree with you that we shouldn't be at all ashamed of working in this great industry, and we shouldn't be blamed too much. But I think we can do sometimes a little bit more in order to encourage the best tourism as possible. You perfectly know, I am from the Balearic Islands, how much we dislike the excess tourists.
Yeah.
What could we do? Because it's not only a question of numbers in this particular case, it's a question of profile of customers that definitely we would like them not to come and not to spoil our values, the perceptions of local societies, because they give little contribution. How can we work in improving at least that customers that visit us are more respectful in some ways with our local values? You have an enormous capacity of influencing that huge amount of customers you bring home. How could we work together, and how could we help us, you help us, to receive? I know you cannot control if Mr. Smith or Mrs. is a good or bad customer, but how could we improve the recognition, the recommendations to your customers that when you come home, behave as you would never dare to behave in your own house?
I think that's a very important point, and people should travel to destinations and respect the areas and the communities that they visit. That doesn't always happen. It's very hard to pinpoint these type of customers without doing some sort of socio-economic profiling before our customers travel, which obviously is not something we can do. My job as CEO of an airline and a tour operator is to fill aircraft. I've got 127 aircraft, I've got 146 on order, 7.5 billion revenue, and I have to fill aircraft. Of course, it's important that people do travel and respect local communities. We do what we can on our website to inform people that they should try and get out of the hotel, visit sites of interest, etc., respect the areas, but there is only so much we can do as a travel business. I've asked the question of a number of people previously who've said, we want a better class of tourists. What do you mean by a better class of tourists? And I never get a straight answer. I think basically people say they want richer tourists, you don't want poor people. Whether that's the case or not, well, it would be interesting to get everybody's definition of a better class of tourists, because I still don't understand what that means. If that means someone that respects the area, the local community, I agree 100%, but it's very hard as a tour operator and an airline to police that. And I think I struggle to see how we can try and get more of the people that do respect communities, etc., to go. But it's something that I think, again, to agree with Gabrielle, there needs to be a public and private partnership to try and make sure that some of the proceeds of tourism are reinvested back into the communities. This should have been happening for years. It should have been happening for decades, and it hasn't been. It's only in the last few years people are talking about it, and there's a lot of catching up to do. And I'm very keen on public-private partnerships to help communities live better life and reap the benefits from tourism. I think there's a lot to do there.
Well, thanks for the message, because there is a movement of the main business companies in tourism in Spain to take steps forwards in this direction, to be more sensible with communities. We hope, if that happens to go through, to have you also on board as one of our major clients and buyers.
I'd love to. As I said, we invest in a number of projects in local communities throughout Europe to reinvest the money that we put aside for sustainability. And it's something that we think is the right thing to do, to put something back. We make money off the back of tourism, and we want local communities to benefit. But I think there has to be a public-private partnership, and we'd be very happy to take part in any initiatives that there are.
Let me make you a very quick question. Do you find the problem we're discussing here today in some other of our competitive destinations that you work in the Mediterranean, or is basically a Spanish issue which is growing and you don't find it in many other countries around in the Mediterranean?
I think all countries are discussing it. Countries move at different speeds. Some countries are way ahead and some companies are behind. But it is a topic that's been discussed pretty much everywhere we go. Fueled probably, as you said, by social media and people talking about it, etc. And quite rightly so. I think there's been, from the fruits of tourism, there's been a very uneven distribution of wealth.
Okay, Gabriele, we've been talking about this impact on local societies and their perceptions, as Luis said, because many times we're talking really about perceptions and not necessarily facts. But high volume agglomeration is one issue. Behavior of the customers is a second issue that may confront the expectation of local societies. There is a third issue in Spain, very problematic, which is short-term rentals. I would like to know how in Italy we've seen that in Florence particularly very strong measures have been taken, like in New York, to try to see how we stop this phenomenon of the illegal short-term rentals that create a misunderstanding of local societies, and rather than improving their quality of life, deteriorating their quality of life. How are you viewing this problem of short-term rentals in Italy?
The first point is that we go to a philosophical problem, the freedom, the economic freedom of the government managing the activities of tourism. So there are two parties in a sense. People that say, I'm an entrepreneur, I have my own flats, I want to give them to Airbnb, and they make a lot of money on the short-term rental of these places. Others say, no, we have to control the flow of tourism. We have to put in place a lot of limitation, a lot of norms, a lot of licenses, and try to... So there is the eternal fight between these two parties. The fact is that the hotel industry is subject to a lot of limitations, insurance, fire, escapes, a lot of sanitation of the places, and the other offer is not. So hoteliers already see this as an unfair competition because these guys have less expenses than what an hotel has. There has been several issues. In my opinion, so far there is no solution. I think what I would personally, if I were in that position, I think I would first of all, who operates these assets should be registered controlled and should pay taxes, which is a small factor in this, but there is a lot of not taxes paid in this business. The second is that, like pharmacies or like other concession, we should calculate what is the area can afford of offer, because there are places in Venice and Florence where the majority, 90, 80% of the activity of the buildings is all given to this new business. In my opinion, to preserve the social local life, the activity, the cultural life, we should have a certain percentage. And who is in, and who is not, like a...
But the issue is not only norms and regulation, it's how to make regulation to be honored.
This is the second part. In my country, it's particularly difficult, but in my opinion, this is the way. We have to... I'm sorry, I'm more for the freedom of the entrepreneurs, of the companies, and so economic activities, but in this case, I think we have to... Otherwise, we destroy everything. And as you are saying, you have no services. The old trattorias or restaurants are changed in McDonald's and in other kind of... So the culture of the place changes. So you go from England, from the States, you go to certain areas of Venice or Florence, where is Italy there, you know? So, and this can apply to a lot of other towns in the world, like Dubrovnik, they made a big effort. I mean, there are cases where there are a lot of initiatives, but none so far seems the right one or sufficient one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm see Steve smiling. A lot of discussions on these issues have been taking place in the last couple of years, but nothing happens. But the movement...
No, but excuse me, it happens, but sometimes they do stupid things, like put €1 tax per day per tourist. What is it, €1?
I don't know your view, Steve. What is your view about that?
Maybe I'm a little naive, but I think it's easy. People that rent these properties out should have a tourism license, they should have a health and safety audit, and they should pay tax. So they should get some members of the government to go on Airbnb, book a room, go and knock on the door. Someone comes to the door and say, can I see your tax return? Can I see your health and safety certificate? Can I see your tourism license? If they haven't got it, fine them €200,000. The problem will drop overnight. It will stop. It will stop completely.
I would hope that your suggestions could be taken in place, because we are right. But we have a great barrier, which is, in contrary of companies like you, which I'm sure you're not selling anything which is illegal.
No.
We have platforms which allow, without any responsibility, to publish a lot of offers which are illegal.
But
if
luckily
we had those platforms controlling that nothing that was not legal was not raised to the websites, and 80% of this problem would disappear.
But you could say that people need licenses, they have to pay tax. That will stop the illegal people. Then you get onto the question, if everybody's legal, what do you want to do about the legal people? But the most important thing is stop the illegal people. Yeah. And luckily you have a government that has the power to change laws, as all countries do.
Luis, in Portugal, have taken a number of measures lately on overtaxing or taxing a little bit higher. But will that solve the problem? Just taxing short-term rentals?
Very shortly. In Portugal, we started regulating, and it was regulated in 2008, short-term rentals. So you need to be registered in a website, you need to have a specific number, you have to comply with certain rules, you pay taxes, clearly, and you have audits by the authorities, the national authorities. This was 2008. Short-term rental represents today almost 40% of the income of tourism revenues in Portugal, 40%. So it's not a matter of saying it's illegal or it's legal, it's good or it's bad. It's what it is, and it's important for the country and for the economy of the country. So any decision that is taken that tears down these 40% is a decision against the economy. And it affects hoteliers as a whole, because you have people and you have demand for both products. In 2018, there were considering the growth of short-term rental in the country, and especially in specific areas, especially in Lisbon and Porto. And one other fact, 75% of the short-term rental is outside Lisbon and Porto. 75%. So when it is, once again, a decision, and many of these places only have short-term rental, they don't have hotels. 80% of the short-term rentals are owned by one family, by one owner. So it's not a big business of funds that buy short-term rental, there are, but it's not like this. What happened was in 2018, they established quotas in certain neighborhoods, and it was not allowed to have more short-term rental, just for short-term rental in those neighborhoods. Now what's happening is, once again, thanks to, or because of the lack of housing, which is a huge problem in Lisbon and Porto, especially in the centers, but all across the country, and I think many of the capitals in Europe, what's happening is there is a series of decisions that were taken in several areas, and one of them affects local lodging, like increasing taxes. They asked for a proof, the government asked for a proof of activity to these lodging. And that's the funny thing, 40% of the local lodging in Lisbon said they didn't answer anything, so they have no activity. So 40% of the licenses have no activity. Once again, if we don't take measures to improve or to evaluate what's the impact and how to do it, then it's difficult to improve the situation. But again, I say that the important thing is that this is not just a commitment from the government or from the public authorities. It's a commitment from the private sector also. And I totally understand, and I'm glad that you don't sell illegal activities. In Portugal, there are no illegal. I mean, they can be illegal as anywhere in the world, but it's regulated, so they can be sold. And they are sold. And it's an answer to demand. So that answer has to exist. And when I say, and this, it was very interesting listening to you, thank God I can say this now, because I wouldn't say this to Steve a year ago, but now I can say everything. So. The question is, when you deal with over-tourism and when you deal with the lack of housing, there is a big part of responsibility on our industry. If I'm a hotelier and I'm opening a new hotel, where will my staff sleep? Where will they come from? This is the question. And when we're talking about compromise, I would love to hear an example of someone that opens a business, and of course they will make lots of studies about markets and how to promote and how to reach other destinations and everything. How many have spoken with their own neighbors? And if we ask this question to ourselves, I would rather have, I live at downtown Lisbon, I would rather have a supermarket or a grocery store on the bottom of a hotel and not a souvenir shop or a fancy restaurant. And this is something that we don't think, and we don't compromise. If we don't compromise with this, we will never get this, the tourism we all want.
Well, thanks a lot for your suggestions. One of the main objectives of this Congress is to try to raise these sensitivities and private sector responses to some issues which are not only government responsibilities. I mean, I'm not my responsibility now to tell you that many companies here present, they have to provide lodging to their employees in order to find appropriate manpower in the summers, because, again, unfortunately, I have to repeat, maybe not in Portugal, but in Spain, short-term rentals are crushing the housing opportunities for a big number of employees and local residents. That's why we bring the issue, because at the end, this bad management of short-term rentals is generating the image of the whole sector.
But José Luis, that's clearly criteria for sustainability. And when Christine talked about, of course, we take for granted that now we don't have a plastic bottle in our room, that's for sure. But how many people ask how much does a waiter earn? How many women do you have in C-level positions in a company that manages a hotel? Would you, Steve, establish this as a criteria in choosing a hotel? Would you stop selling your biggest seller hotel or your biggest seller experience in Portugal or in Spain because they don't follow this kind of criteria?
Not those two, but we may stop selling.
But you have to start thinking about that.
Yeah, but one thing that impacts hotels is, for example, a lack of staff or a lack of trained staff because there are not enough people that can afford housing around the hotel to work there. So this rental problem is impacting the customer service offered by Spanish hotels. Very often they are understaffed, or the staff that they have are the most underqualified people. And it is affecting the tourism industry as a whole and potentially giving certain hotels, resorts, regions a very bad reputation when compared to other destinations.
Do you choose your hotels according to the hours of training they give to their staff?
No.
Miguel, even though you're still running an official organism, I'd like to get the views from you on how do you view these issues that we're talking now?
I do, well, we haven't spoke before about this, but I agree with Luis that, and I think there is a kind of a social breakdown. We broke the social contract with our residents. We, the public and the private sector, both of us.
I like that expression.
Because
we broke the contract with our residents.
Because for the tourism industry to flourish, they need the residents to be happy. For governments to keep winning elections, they need to keep people happy. So it's a common objective of keeping people happy, people that live in that destination. And I agree with Luis. How many times a private sector, hotelier or airline or whatever, asks about what's the social good of us doing this in this destination? Or sometimes in governments, for example, the European Union directives governing the big platforms, they were made for European platforms to flourish in competition with the American counterparts, because we were lagging behind the development of big, digital platforms. And they say, okay, we have to protect them. We have to, skip everything else and just protect people developing platforms. And by doing that, over and over again, we broke this contract with the local residents. But I think it's easier to mend that contract than in other industries. Because what we have to do, again, is what Luis was saying, is to listen to the residents and apply formulas and laws and business plans that fulfill the, requirements of the destinations. Because if not, people are going to vote for political options that will, keep the tourism industry at bay. Yeah. And that is bad for the industry, that is bad for the residents, and that is bad for the governments in charge. So I think that here public-private partnership, we talk about it a lot. But we really need to talk to each other and say, okay, we need to concentrate on how many people come to the country, how much money do they pay when they come to the country, and what about what they want?
Well, that was a question I'm going to ask you. Two questions. I'm sorry, Christine, I'll come to you. And as the CEO of the Spanish Tourism Board, two questions. How is your philosophy of marketing new customers from Spain? Volume, and don't tell me quality. Are we segmenting because quality is so evident? That if you don't give quality, you're not competing. But what are your objectives in terms of the new marketing policies of Tour España? First question. And the second one is, would it be wise to have in the new Tour España that the private sector aims to have the citizens, the residents, occupying a seat in the board of the new Tour España, providing that views of the citizens?
I will start with the last question. It's either that or doing more surveys like we are doing this year about what do they think about the industry. I mean, there are different ways to incorporate the residents' views and points of views into the management and the governance of
But not sitting on the board.
It could be a solution. They have tried that in some other parts of Europe, and it works for some of them, but there are different ways. I mean, that is something to be discussed. And on the first question, we talk about added value, but added value is not only in monetary terms. It's only in terms of social responsibility and sustainability. So, in the case of Spain, now for us, a visitor that comes to a less known destination has more added value than a visitor that goes to an overcrowded destination. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the social contribution of that visitor, even if he spends less money in the country, is greater than going to a crowded destination where he is not going to be liked as much. So we cannot do everything. We have to take strategic measures. So now we think about the added value for the country of the visitors that we are attracting. So we do segment those people. And for example, in the case of the Balearic Islands, cycling, we were discussing with Steve yesterday, how to expand the season in the Balearic Islands, which is an overcrowded destination maybe in some moments in the high season, in the peak season. And cycling has been identified as a tool to go and take people there of season. Do they spend more money than people that go in August? Probably not. But do they socially contribute more to the well-being of the Balearic Island people? Yes. So that is what we do. We identify segments that contribute more and add more value to our destinations.
Well, that's a common view, so we share also that strategy. It's a pity we still not sit on the board of Tour España. We hope to be sitting soon in a new restructuring.
Yeah, but for that, let me...
How much will you contribute to the budget of Tour España? That's the question.
Let me answer you straight. As much as they allow us to take decisions in common and not only to...
That's a very good answer.
Thank you, Luis.
You're welcome.
Just, I think we're a little bit short of time, and we still have a couple of minutes. Christine, again, going back into you, since you are a big prescriber, what would you recommend us in Spain to improve in order that we have the highest attention and the highest, let's say, performance, in other words, ratings from the people that you influence in TripAdvisor? Any suggestions that we could follow in order to improve our positioning in a social network like yours?
Yeah, I think one effective tool, and it's been a great tool for 22 years, is reputation management, right? Making sure that we're educating the businesses, the operators, and all of the things that they need to do to make sure that the community is informed about their thing to do, their restaurant, their hotel, and the kind of practices they have. The second is, travelers want to travel like a local. So through the lens of a local person, the things that they like to do, the experiences and memories that they have, those are the kind of things that we come up with sentiment analysis on what people really care about. So telling real, authentic stories through people that have been there before, locals that live there, resonates, right? I think with travel, it's very emotional, it's very memorable, and real stories from real people, you just can't beat. So for us, it's about the content, the storytelling, and then making sure that we're leveraging the data and the reputation of the businesses to amplify the message of all of the great things that Madrid and Spain has to offer.
Thank you.
Just one thing.
Please,
while
please.
I agree with that, nevertheless, Spain is a country where last year almost a third of the people that came to Spain had been in Spain for more than 10 times, particularly people from the UK, and what they want is a good experience based on good service, good product, and a reliable, experience as a whole. And so new experiences and travel as an adventure and mingling with the locals is one part of the business, but there is another part of the business more related to our vacational visitors, that what they want is good value for money and reliability.
Yep.
And we have to make sure in Spain, and we were discussing with this with Steve as well, is in delivering good service, in delivering good products, in being reliable about what is a vacation in Spain, and having those products in the shelves of our markets. And so this is one part of the business, but in Spain, I would say that a lot of the business is made in the vocational tourism segment, and there is where we need to work very close with travel agencies, tour operators, and the local destinations and industry to ensure that the service we give to our visitors is of top quality. And I mentioned the word quality here because there is fierce competition outside, and service is paramount.
I sometimes object the word quality because it's so
I know.
evident that we have banalized completely the value of what quality means. I mean, you wouldn't go anywhere to buy anything and the seller telling you is a quality car, is a quality refrigerator.
Well, quality is subjective, right?
Yeah. Sorry?
Quality is subjective. It's different.
Of course.
It's relative.
Well, quality is the starting point. It's never the end.
Right.
If you have quality, you can compete. And then starting by having quality, what is your differential proposal? So I buy your product rather than his product, or your experience rather than his experience. I have been very much, admiring Portugal because you took as an objective of your tourism board to conceive and develop products, experiences. I always, when I have private conversations with this gentleman and his predecessors, we lack in our tourism board the job of conceiving new differential products that can be undertaken afterwards in different parts of the country with the most synergies out of it. I think that is something from a tourism board, maybe is too ingenious or too naive to say that, but...
we don't have the competences.
Yes.
Well,
he needs to have the
law.
competences.
Because I've discussed it with you.
We had the competences, and we had the money, which is important, because no money...
They have more money than me.
Well, let's not talk about it. I have nothing now. But just to add a little bit on what you said, and I think this is the time, I totally agree, and it was wonderful to hear all the speeches. This is the time of action. But the action comes from everywhere and to all. The bigger we are, the bigger our responsibility. And we have here big players. I would love... we always say that things only move if you have a stick and a carrot. And we have the stick and the carrot in our hand to change an entire destination, to change an entire ecosystem. We just need to do the things that we have to do.
Well, thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. It's been very inspiring. All your contributions. Time has gone, and we have another following panel. And I would like to call a big round of applause to our panelists. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.